Hello, everyone. This is your host, Sanjeev Goyal. This month, we are bringing an amazing person, Mr. PK Agarwal. And PK has more than 3 decades of experience. He is IIT Delhi alum, mechanical engineers. He was CTO of California State under Arnold Schwarzenegger. And now he is Dean of University of Santa Cruz. So let's talk to him and learn from him what is his journey from IIT Delhi to here, and how is he making the difference in our community, and how can he help all of us. PK, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Welcome. Good to be here, Sanjeev. Thanks for having me.
So PK, my first question is very simple. Tell us a little bit about your IIT days and anything interesting you would like our audience to know.
Well, maybe I should start with before we get to the IIT part, maybe we should start with a dark secret.
Sure, absolutely. All my years.
So I harbored the aspiration of becoming a stand-up comedian.
Ah,
Now, we all know it doesn't pay very well, but if you do this as a side gig, it's okay. And and particularly all of us who came from IIT or engineering backgrounds, or sometimes even for American audiences, if you look serious and you look desi, they don't expect humor. So actually, our humor is even much more, impactful, because people are sort of not expecting anything, and then boom, even if it's slightly funny, it works well. Anyway, maybe I should tell you a humor, maybe to give you but actually in the business of humor, I didn't want to use the typical humor these days, which is, a lot of swearing and cussing. And I mean, that's okay, that's funny up to a point, but that's just not my style. I mean, that's just, so I actually, what I did is that just as a hobby thing, I collected just about every book. This is pre-internet, starting from pre-internet 25 years ago, any book I could find on humor. All the famous Hollywood, Bollywood comedians, and they got everybody written stuff. Maybe I should give you an example of a kind of a humor I like. So there was a research done recently, and the subject of the research was heart attacks. And they noticed that the French people eat a lot of fat, except they get fewer heart attacks than Americans, Canadians, and British. On the other hand, Japanese eat so little fat, yet they have fewer heart attacks than Americans and Canadians and British. Italians, on the other hand, drink a lot of wine and have fewer heart attacks than Americans, and you get the idea. Now, Chinese, on the other hand, drink very little wine, but still have fewer heart attacks than, you get the sort of the script. So all of us who are kind of science-oriented and very analytical, if you put it all together, you can deduce that it doesn't matter what you eat or drink, is speaking English that'll kill you.
Good one. Good one. I was not sure where it is going, but that's a good one.
See, here's the deal: when you're in high-profile roles, I realize people always laugh at your jokes.
True.
If they have to pay, maybe they won't. So anyway, back to my IIT journey. It kind of made me asking that question, made me nostalgic. So maybe I should throw in some little factoids, and people, without looking at my profile or what year I graduated, give you a sense of what life was like when I was at IIT Delhi. So first of all, petrol or gasoline cost 76 paisa a liter. Paisa being, 0.76 rupees a liter. A Fiat car used to cost, there's only two cars, Ambassador and Fiat, right? Of course, Fiat car was 10,000 rupees.
Wow.
And we used to go to movies like all IITians, we go late night movies. And if we didn't have money, The front seat tickets were, 1 rupee 25. Or if you really wanted to be in the balcony, it'll be, 350 or something. So I know I'm dating myself, I'm dating my age, very well. But perhaps I'll ask our audience to just, without any cross-checking, to imagine what year that was. And in fact, I was lucky enough to have a scholarship at IIT Delhi for the first year, and I used to get 75 rupees a month.
Wow.
That was like, incredible amounts of, I was rich.
Yeah, you were rich at that time. Especially for a student, 75 rupees at that time must be a lot of money. You must have a lot of friends.
Yeah, oh, I did, and the downside of actually all that is that, when you leave a country not too far off after IIT, you sort of you date yourself, and it's like music, your music of your youth becomes your music. So when I go to India now, and when I see something, like simple things costing 500 rupees, my first reaction, oh my God, this is too expensive. I'm used to sort of different set of numbers. But what I did learn at IIT, like a lot of us did, I think I learned the business of drinking, smoking, billiards. Seriously, certainly we learned a lot about engineering and all the other things.
Yeah.
But the interesting part is that, we all of us who went to IIT, you don't realize what you're going through. Certainly, you build these lifelong relationships. You spend 4 years, 5 years with the same group of people, and that's such a treat in life to be able to just call up somebody after 25 years, 30 years, and say, I'm here, and it's just like you start where you stopped. But even more interestingly, when I came to US, I went to a state college before I went to UC Berkeley, and that's when I realized what IIT is all about. I was in a master's program, and my professors told me that I don't belong there because I already know everything. So what we had finished in fourth year of IIT, those days IIT was 5 years, they were doing in master's programs. Now this gives you a sort of the dichotomy and what's really all about. No, IIT wasn't a very big brand name, at least in the US at that time. And of course, it's all of us collectively built that brand name. It just didn't happen through some magic.
Sure.
But certainly, as people like us, all of us, you and I and many others, all of the members of diaspora, we made it happen. And I think to some extent, those of you who are watching this, if you're under 40, I want to pass on some guilt that we have done our part of being the brand ambassadors. Once you get past the business of making money and making a living, you have an obligation to carry on that legacy of building the brand India.
Absolutely. And, PK, so I travel to India quite often, and I am pleasantly surprised and impressed with the next generation. They're not like us. They don't have any fear. They're not worried about anything. They are all invincible, but at the same time, that the pride they have and then the desire to achieve something is absolutely refreshing and very, I'll say, very humbling too. So to be honest, I feel really, it's such an amazing feeling when I meet the youngsters and the next generation, and especially in an institution like IIT. I can't tell you, it's a phenomenal experience. But let's talk a little bit more about you and fast forward. So you have spent more than a decade in public sector, which is very unique. I spoke to a lot of entrepreneurs, people who have built multi-billion-dollar companies, unicorn and all of that. This is the first time I'm talking to somebody who has spent 1+ decade, and that too when Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor of California. So tell me a little bit about that, because if I remember correctly, when Arnold came, California was not doing extremely well. The state had serious issues, but when he left, we were almost into positive. Maybe I'm missing, but I would love to understand from you what he has done so unique, which previous governor couldn't do. And currently we are in a similar situation where the state is in really a dire need of funds and we have a lot of challenges. So why this happened? Someone like me, like average Joe, I don't understand it. What a governor does or doesn't do, which creates such issues.
So first of all, Sanjeev, I have to say this. I mean, I've done a lot of fun things in my life, but that definitely was one of the wonderful moments. He's a fantastic boss. He's a great leader. I mean, I can share some stories, but I tell you exactly where we were and why I was there. So there's a ranking of all 50 states in the U.S. for their use of technology. And ironically, when he became the governor, California ranked number 47 out of 50.
Wow.
And and he was being visited by all of the leaders, Larry Ellison, Bill Gates, you name it. I mean, CEOs.
Yeah, they were all his personal friends.
Well, first of all, because who he is, but more importantly, California spends close to $5 billion a year on IT. I mean, it's not a small sum of money. I mean, it's bigger than GDP of a lot of countries, just IT alone. And so what he wanted to do was fix it, because all these leaders were saying, Governor, this is California. I mean, this is state of Silicon Valley, and you cannot have these kind of technology issues. And he was very clear that part of what he's trying to do is build a team. Now, governors have certain amount of influence, but ironically, one thing I learned in public sector is never about money. It's all about leadership. And I can say that, and I don't take it just as my achievement. There's like 10,000 people who work in IT in the state of California. When I left, we were number one. And again, this is all about leadership, his leadership. It's about mobilizing the people, it's working collectively. And quite frankly, this is not just about marketing yourself. So you attract the right kind of people. So that should kind of give you an idea of what happens. And oftentimes, all of us, particularly if you're in the private sector or in large metropolitan areas, state governments particularly are kind of like non-entities. I mean, I'll be quite frank. And to some extent, that's true. But when you think about this, that if you're getting a ticket on this for driving too fast, which a lot of us do, guess what? The fact that within 2 seconds, the highway patrol person knows who you are, it's a testament to IT. I mean, just imagine that even pre-internet days, how do you get to these massive databases, somebody standing on the street? There are 20-25% of people in US that need state or some sort of assistance to survive, whether you're too old or you're medically needy or you need child support, enforcement. So to some extent, it's the massive safety net of people we often don't interact with if we come from the more privileged side. So that's kind of a little bit of a context. And the reason I ended up in those sort of roles, that early on I decided, partly because I went to university in Sacramento to begin with, which is a small town, a state capital. But I was kind of decided that I don't want to pursue the sort of the tried and tested path, which is finish university, get a nice job in the corporate sector, make a lot of money. I guess call it my laziness or call it my intrigue with the things that are different. And I just decided to do something a little bit off the beaten path. And of course, everything comes with a risk. We all know that. And, sometimes you get lucky and some things you don't work out so well. But, since this reminds me of a fascinating history of what I've lived through. So just to give you numbers, I'm in the US about 52 years now. Actually would be 50, sorry, I should be 54 pretty soon, a deck of cards, including jokers. So India, brand image of India in the US has gone through 4 phases. And the reason this became very important to me early on is that especially when you come to in a rural area where people, I was probably the first Indian a lot of people have come across in a place like Sacramento. A lot of people started to call me Gangadeen. And
Why?
first I thought it was just a funny kind of joke or something, it's an Indian name. Well, I would encourage our audiences to go to YouTube and watch the colonial legacy of a black and white Hollywood movie called Gangadeen. See, this is Hollywood, Bollywood creates images and impressions. That's what culture is. They shape culture. And you suddenly realize that for a lot of people, Bollywood shaped the perception of India is. It's just people who don't have clothes, they're starving, they say yes, sir, to the white masters. So I call that probably starting 1920s until like early 60s, the India of snake charmers and Maharajas. That's about it. I mean, that's so when I came along, that was still the prevalent brand image. But thanks to Beatles and Maharishis, it became like a spiritual India. And I kind of, come along and I did a little bit of yoga. So कहते हैं ना अंधों में काना राजा. So I was the only yoga instructor in town. Anyway, so then fast forward, Y2K brought about a different brand of India. It's called Business India.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of CEOs you look at, whether it's they're not a commonplace thing. I mean, most people, person on the street doesn't know, who Sundar Pichai might be, or, even to this day. So that's what I call roughly 10, 15 years of Business India. And then we moved into this current phase, what I call Cool India. And the Cool India is a phase when everybody on the street knows India and they associate India with being cool, which is a fantastic thing to be living through now, But I've gone through where you were like, sort of nobody. And the Cool India had a very precise moment. I'm a kind of like a historian, cultural historian, and I have a lot of video clips and all that when I give talks. But Cool India happened in 2016 in Big Bang Theory, when Hollywood decided that it's okay for Raj to kiss Emily on the screen. Seriously, I mean, this is an image they do that. Hey, if a white girl, not even the guy, but the white girl can kiss an Indian guy on the screen with 20, 30 million people watching, you're cool. So that's kind of a progression of the India I have seen in my journey, and especially when you're in public sector roles, in those high-profile roles, you see things from a different perspective. You don't necessarily, and of course, when you're off the beaten track, I decided to get married to an American girl. Of course, her parents were kind of hardcore Texans. My parents were North Indian Banyas.
Oh, wow.
So we lived through, it was a fun, looking in the rear mirror, every journey is a fun journey because pain goes away. So anyway, that's a very long answer to your question. But I think if there's a final thing that I learned through the process, that while IIT gave me some really strong core skills of critical thinking, to some extent, self-confidence that you know what's going on. Along the journey, I learned that if there's a thing that important, when I talked about humor, even that's part of that, to be a leader, you have to learn to communicate effectively. Sure. And oftentimes, I'm not the business advice. Imagine Socrates used to go around giving advice, they poisoned him. So I'm just talking about myself. But that worked well. I mean, even growing up through the professional journey in the US, didn't really have any role models because our role models were either people running 7-Eleven or just.
Our world has transformed, especially in the last few
transformed,
decades.
yeah.
Even for me, So I moved here almost 2 decades ago, and I'm
Hmm?
volunteering for PanIIT since 2003.
Hmm.
And I've seen an amazing growth. I still remember in early 2003 to 2007, were we used to, because nobody knew IIT as a brand. And so there are a lot of work as a Pan IIT organization has done to build this brand in America. But more than Pan IIT, it is all about alum. It's a cumulative efforts of each one of us to build IIT as a brand as well as India as a brand. And thanks to people like you who have worked extremely hard, because my generation, we did some work, but we become more of a recipient and we just enhanced it, but we didn't have to do the foundational work, which you and your generation have done. So thank you so much for that. It's really amazing. But PK, you have done a lot of things, and I have so many questions. So one big question I want to ask from you is, you are seeing, I mean, you saw internet evolving from a protocol sending messages from one computer to other computer to today lifeline of every single person. In fact, today we cannot even imagine a world without internet. I mean, you can live without electricity, but you cannot live without internet, which is fascinating, right? So question I have for you is, generative AI, especially in last 12 months or 10 months, it become the most uh, amazing thing. Every single person, even a person who doesn't even understand AI, knows about ChatGPT and all the different products like that.
Mhm.
uh, Question for you is, I'm studying it a lot, and I am trying to find where today it exists. What are the key things it's going to replace in terms of daily functioning or regular functioning we do? It passed the medical exam, bar exam, and all of that. I think we are almost at a point where it can even write policies for us. If generative AI can write policies, are in, of course, in certain guide rails and all of that, or whatever the definition people like you define, how do you see, or what do you think will be the role of government? Because if a computer can create policies for the country or a state, what will government do?
Well, so first of all, yeah, we all play around with all these generative AI tools at this point. And in my current business, that's of education, you know, we struggle with this issue. At this point, any take-home exam, it's like suspect, it's especially take-home essays. I mean, it's like, so there's stories after story. Uh, but as far as government is concerned, actually, it's going to be quite a bit sheltered, because the reason for that is simply this, that the policy-making part of government is relatively small. It's the safety net and collecting taxes and redistributing taxes and employment support and those kind of things. Yeah, it'll clearly take some functions and make them anything that can be streamlined and people can become more productive. But actually, it's in the private sector, which you already see examples of layoffs, or IBM saying they won't hire 8,000 people. I think this will be the biggest impact. Now, let me just say this, that as, again, an economic historian and a cultural historian, I think the part that I don't sort of agree with, and this is a different role for government actually, is that if you look at what you're describing as a waves of technology, I call it waves of technology, starting from mainframe to mini computers to client server to PCs to local area networks to internet and IoT and big data. There's waves, and each wave sort of had a different sort of impact. This wave is stronger than any wave. Mm-hmm. And it's going to have more impact. Now, each wave displaced certain number of jobs. I mean, like, internet took care of travel agents in the current form. That's example. Even earlier on, bank tellers. I mean, roles have to be redefined.
Yes.
But this role, because this goes after both physical workers, like farm workers, when you combine AI with robotics, it goes like strawberry picking, for instance, even strawberries, some delicate things like that. or knowledge work, like you said, is that, it's going to displace a lot of jobs. But the beauty of it is that if you look at the history of innovation, in the end, economies grow and new types of jobs get created. But what happens is that in that 1 decade or 2 decade, it's very hard to turn a truck driver into a big data analyst, But certainly a truck driver can become a drone operator. So this is where government steps in, the policymaking role. Smart governments realize there's going to be a lot of displacement because of these technologies. And can we move these people quickly into the other? So there are survival issues.
Yeah, so see, if you look back, especially last 30 years, I believe we have created more jobs than we used to have. Average income of the person exceeds tremendously. In fact, America is fascinating. I recently read some data is $80,000. It's average income in America, which I believe from the global standard, it's way, way, way higher than any other country I can think of, for especially 300 plus million people. It's not for one or two people we are talking. So overall income has increased. A lot of retraining required, a lot of reskilling required, and a lot of our friends are doing a great job. One of our friend, Eightfold AI, has done a phenomenal job. They work with several state departments and really help them making people employable. So there's a lot of great work happening through the technology. The question I really have it is, government makes so many policies, and I see that a lot of policies are even conflicting with each other policies. And today, the challenge is state level is different policies, federal level different policies, and then you have city level policies, then you have county level policies. With the tools like generative AI, I believe if we can bring all those policies in one place, it can provide better insights to policymakers. However, the concern remains the same. Some time I feel like we are overgoverned. Some states may be understaffed. So where is the reality, right? Because we both understand, and this is a phenomenon I'm seeing, it is if you overgovern any community, you will have challenges. And if you don't provide right framework, you will have challenges. So where do you draw the line? California is one state, I feel like there are a lot of changes needs to happen, because currently it is not in a great state. It is, I believe, is the most fertile in terms of intellectual capital, the most fertile state. But in spite of all of that, we have a very poor financial outlook that needs to be fixed. Technology, I'm sure, is going to play a huge role, and people like you have built that foundation. So where are we going from that? Can you talk a little bit about what you think the new leadership should do, or which they are not doing, or more of your approach on how should we fix these kind of issues at a global scale?
Great
because
question.
policy making is very important, and governance is very important. We both understand that. In AI world, it is even more important because we know, and there's a lot of talk, people like Elon Musk and everybody's talking about are challenges about AI. If we don't regulate it properly, we are going to have a chaos, and which is definitely, I can clearly see that in several aspects of our lives.
Yeah, well, there's two separate questions. So let me just sort of talk about the states and federal governments and counties and cities. By the way, just to give you an example, that there are, just to give you numbers, there are 10,000 cities in the United States. There are cities of incorporated cities, 3,000 counties, and of course, we know 50 states and one central government. So there's a lot of governments out there, and there's a lot of conflict out there.
Yeah.
One thing we all know, that every government at least proclaims to be business friendly, economy friendly, job friendly, and all of those things. Those sound bites, those work. And one of the biggest challenges for government is to find the middle ground between all these competing priorities. So let's just say on one hand, there's a need to build a lot of housing pretty quickly. But on the other hand, you have to say, is the water there? Is there clean, impact on wildlife? So part of what you learn. In fact, one of the reasons that I moved successfully from governmental roles to private sector and other sort of roles, is that you realize that how do you bring these competing factions together and try to move the ball forward? So I think where AI now, what happens is that because of the great American experiment in democracy, I think if we had one big monolithic government, like a very centrally controlled, dominant central control, then they can go south also, and they can become awry, and they can go crazy. So I think to some extent, the richness of American democracy is that there are so many entities, and you have to learn to work with each other. But the downside is that there are all these, like you said, policies that compete with each other, conflict with each other. So I think where AI comes in, and a lot of times we don't know what's going on because everybody's acting independently. So what AI can do actually to bring sanity and say, look, we need to build a lot of housing in California. Can somebody really extract in the next 3 hours and tell us where the issues are? So this is where I think tools like AI can help on the business of regulation. Yeah, I mean, it's the first time, at least I'm aware of, where industry is saying regulate us. I mean, never before in the history of humanity, probably
Never happened.
never happened before. So I just, I mean, I'm learning like everybody else, but I imagine there must be something really serious. And we all know about defense and all those kind of things. But yeah, so it's going to be a fun journey. But I think there's, like everything else, there's a certain amount of fear and hype and all that too. And things tend to normalize. Hey, it's a good life.
Yeah. So PK, another question, very simple question. Any interesting story you have from your days of working with Arnold Schwarzenegger? Anything you can share, which there is no confidentiality issue?
Probably the most interesting story is that I talked about this journey of trying to bring state from number 47 to number 1. And so actually we had worked very hard at all different fronts and by that time, few other leaders, by that time, there was even a CIO in place. And so we all worked extremely hard. And I remember we were number 2. And so we thought it's going to be room for a lot of celebration and a lot of joy. And, as to, hey, we're number 2. I mean, like being number 1 is a fool's journey. I mean, even I play a lot of tennis, it's only be one tennis player who can be number 1 at a given point in time, and even maybe not for long. Maybe not if you're Djokovic, maybe or Alcaraz. You're going to Spain, you're going to see Alcaraz there. Anyway, and he was pretty steadfast. He didn't really say work hard or being number 2 is not good enough. He simply said he only knows one number, thereby saying number 2 is not the number he knows. So it gives you a sense of people's personality and how they motivate people in different ways. That's not necessarily, exactly, go work harder, or reach your numbers, or that's not good enough. So that's like, I hope this helps.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So another, that brings to almost to the end of our segment. So can you share anything from your past, or if you can go back in time and meet anyone, who will that be and why?
Oh boy, the people, I guess let me sort of, I don't know, one person would be good enough, but I certainly would like to have dinner with Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Not for the usual reasons, but these are people who were so steadfast in their convictions against enormous odds. And, they accomplished some things they didn't. And just actually listening to them to talk to each other, because, certainly Martin Luther was influenced by Gandhi a lot. That would be a fun conversation. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So, PK, in the conversation, I've learned a lot of interesting things, but 3 things really stand out for me. Number 1 is really, it's about leadership. And the leader's job is not really to direct people or tell them exactly what to do. Leader's job is really inspire them so they can do something meaningful. And that's the kind of charter you got from Arnold. Number 2 is really thinking through the problem in a holistic way and then laying out the plan and then have a conviction to execute it, because a lot of us are really, really good in planning, but we don't have a conviction that we can achieve it, we can make it happen. So that conviction is very important. And the last one is, together we can, if we agree and we decide, we can create any kind of brand, which is what a lot of us came to this country and we have built up brand. So brand is nothing but a concept, I will say, or a common belief we have, and we decide that we want to build something, whether it's a brand or community or even nation. We just have to believe in, and we can implement it or we can execute it.
Well, that's great listener. My 30 minutes of rambling, you managed to succinctly state in 1 minute.
Thank you so much. I was paying attention, I guess. But it's so fascinating and refreshing to hear from you. Do you have any prediction of our world 2050 and beyond, whether it's education or governance or anything, in quick 1 minute?
First of all, I don't think I'll be around. So I think most of us can speak to the future. We just don't know when it's going to happen, But I think clearly it's going to be a very different world than we live in. And it's hard for me to say good or bad, but certainly I think the technology cycle would have lived this life cycle. And I hope humanity prevails.
Thank you so much, PK, for your time. I really had a wonderful time. And for our friends, if you're listening to it, please go and check it out. PK has done phenomenal work, and he is now Dean of University of Santa Cruz. And you can reach out to him. How can they reach out to you, PK? Through LinkedIn or?
LinkedIn, yeah, love to hear from our audience. Networks is life. It's people. It's all about people, and I love to connect with our IIT alums, not just Delhi, elsewhere. Share your thoughts. If you're in the Bay Area, stop by. We have coffee. So I'm on LinkedIn, or it's very simple, Agarwal with 1G, not 2G, Agarwal at UCSC for University of California, Santa Cruz.edu.
Awesome. Thank you so much, PK. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Sanjeev. Enjoyed the conversation. Take care. Bye-bye.